Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Welcome back. Well, now we talk all about Shutdown, Showdown. Joining us now, David Bier, immigration policy analyst at Cato Institute's Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity. That's what we need around the world, David, this year, liberty and prosperity. Do we not? Welcome and Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you back. Well, first of all, give me your overall, before we plunge into this, what is your overall prediction about when this ends, how it ends? Pelosi takes the gavel. She's talking about ending it as soon as she does. Can she? Will Trump give the credit? What do you think?
No, I don't think that Pelosi will end the shutdown, and I don't think that the shutdown will end this week, and probably not next week either. I think the parties are still pretty far apart, and there's really no sign of compromise from either side. So until something about the politics changes, I think we're looking at one of the longest shutdowns that we've seen.
Now, one of the things that's happening here, Trump, of course, is starting to fear a 2020 GOP primary, right? Because that's the only thing that could keep him. He was ready to sign the bill and then did an about face on the wall. And that is, I think, because somebody told him, Mr. President, you could face a primary on immigration. Do you agree?
Oh, I don't think that the president has anything to worry about there. I think,
but he ran on the wall. He ran on the wall, David. He ran on the wall.
Of course he did. Of course he did. But the president doesn't have control over the purse strings. That's Congress. And if Congress doesn't want to give him the money, making Border Patrol work for free is really not
but let's separate
the answer. And that's kind of where he's at right now. You might be
right. We'll leave aside the substance. I don't want to get too deeply into the wall here, but you might be right. Just to go into it for a minute. On substance, you might be right. The president doesn't control the purse strings. But on perception and politics, not policy, there would be an opportunity for those on the right to challenge him when he didn't even build 1 square mile of the wall, right?
No, I honestly don't think anyone's going to be able to run to the right of Trump. I think his supporters are, hardcore enough that they would support him regardless of whether or not he gets this border wall money or not. I think the blame will fall on Democrats, and I think he's going to hope that fuels their outrage and catapults him to a second term.
But he's had 7 chances now to do it. This isn't the only one. There have been 7 chances to build this wall, get some money for it. So far, we have $0, right?
So far we have, yes.
Right.
So far we have $0 for the wall. He's going to say, he's got some money, but at the end of the day, I don't see a wall. No one else sees a wall, so he hasn't gotten it done. And that is a broken campaign.
But is the immigration problem for Trump deeper than the wall? Because Obama deported more people than Trump for this many years in office, right? Is it deeper than the wall?
For Democrats, it's absolutely deeper than the wall. The real problem.
No. I mean, going back to the right. In other words, it would seem to me, Trump, you say you're insistent Trump is not vulnerable from the right. Okay, the wall is one issue. There are other issues with immigration, right? One of them is that Obama, to this point in his presidency, had deported more people than Trump, who's supposedly tough on immigration.
I honestly think the number one reason why people on the right are so supportive of the president is that he is so anti-left and causes such problems for the Democrats and the Democratic reaction. And I don't ultimately think that whether he gets the border wall or gets deportations up to higher than Obama levels is going to make much of a difference. Well, you realize what
you're saying. Okay, so you're offering a thesis, and maybe you're right. What you're offering is a thesis saying, turns out immigration is not really what the far right cares about. What they care about is having a right-wing president who will stand up to the media, and maybe that's true. Is that true?
I certainly think it's more important than the actual policies on the ground I think that he's going to maintain that. 90% of Republicans, according to Gallup, support the president's, what he's doing, which is incredibly high for a president at this point who hasn't accomplished building the border wall. So I really
a whole
don't
lot
think
else.
he should be afraid of a challenge from the right.
Okay, all right.
Even if he doesn't get the border wall.
All right. Now, but what then is causing, though? Okay, but that doesn't. Let's go back. Let's get into Trump's mind. You're not afraid, but is Trump afraid of a challenge from the right? Because what else, if that's true, why would he suddenly be digging in his heels now on the wall, right? I mean, he knows that the shutdown is hurting him with swing voters, right? We're talking about the base thus far. Now, the shutdown clearly hurts him with swing voters who voted for him in 2016, right? He needs those. If there's nothing to fear, as you suggest, from the base and the right, then why do the shutdown at all?
Well, I certainly think that if he was able to win this shutdown fight, that would give him a boost among his own base. I don't think anyone who's not anti-Trump now is going to suddenly become anti-Trump because of a few weeks of a shutdown. But if you're pro-Trump and you're on the fence, like, should I go out and vote in November 2020 for this guy who wasn't able to get the wall done, I think it's not that they're going to turn and then vote for a challenger, but they might not go out and vote. And what his strategy was in 2016, and I think it's going to be the same in 2020, is really driving out the vote from that core supporters who are backing the president.
Well, Karl Rove, Abe Lincoln, many others throughout the years have made the argument that the only thing that really matters is the base. I wish I could remember the Lincoln quote. I can't. But Karl Rove has said many times, swing voters will go as they go. There's no point in chasing them all. Just grow the base as large as you can, and that's win elections. Maybe that's the David Bier thesis as well.
Well, I think it's certainly the thesis of the Trump 2016 presidential campaign, in which that's exactly what he was able to do. Both grow his base, but also suppress the base of Hillary Clinton.
There's a but, though. Here's the but. Here's the caveat to that. Pennsylvania and Michigan, and probably Wisconsin, but Pennsylvania and Michigan could not have been carried with base alone. He did very well with swing voters in suburban Detroit and suburban Philadelphia.
Well, he grew the base. So it's not just the base. He actually brought new people into the Republican Party while at the same time essentially preventing Hillary from growing the Democratic Party at all.
All right.
And so that I think is the other flip side.
We can quibble about semantics, like what constitutes swing voter, what constitutes somebody who's left swing votership and come over to the base. We can quibble about all that. All right. Point well taken. What do you see? Okay, Pelosi comes in. What do you think she does? I mean, I think we know generally what she'll do, but what does she do as speaker with respect to the shutdown? Does she offer a deal and an olive branch?
No, I don't think so. I think she desperately needs all of her members to vote for her for speaker on the House floor, which has not happened yet. She is not actually the speaker of the House yet, and she needs to not lose any of those progressive wing voters or members of Congress.
But they've already had the intra-party vote. Now, what's left is the constitutional and the legal vote, which is almost like a motion of no confidence in the UK. If Democrats were to break ranks on that, then you could elect Kevin McCarthy speaker. I mean, if you break ranks on the legal vote, that's a motion of no confidence. That's a confidence motion. Essentially, then you elect you elect the other party, right? So they don't have much latitude.
No, you still need a majority of the House. So the way it worked with Boehner when the same situation came up, ultimately, if you lose members of your own party, you have to get to the 218 figure of a majority of the House in order to be elected Speaker of the House. And so if you lose a few members, they're not going to vote for the other guy. I mean, they're not going to vote
what you're
for the
saying, but
GOP.
you lose a few. That's if you lose 7. What happens if you lose 17? Then you're not Speaker.
Then you're not Speaker.
Then
and
Republicans
that's what
elect
she's
the
worried
Speaker.
about.
Right. So
No. You wouldn't. You have to get a majority of the House. So the GOP.
Well, Republican would have a majority. In other words, when you come to the constitutional vote, not the intra-party vote, but the constitutional vote on the floor, call the question for the election of the Speaker. If, say, you were to lose 17 votes on the Democratic side, you would ipso facto elect the Republican Speaker.
No, because you actually need to get to that 218 figure. So
but you would get to the
Republican
would get to the 218 if you flip. I'm just saying, say you flip 20. I don't know what the number is, but if you flip the requisite number,
but the Democrats you flip are not going to vote for the Republican. They're going to vote for a different Democrat.
Well, or they might abstain. That's true. Well, that's true too. But then
abstain, yeah.
That's true too. That's a possibility. But then
so Pelosi is concerned about that floor vote still, and until that floor vote passes, I think she's really going to hold the line. So she has this meeting today with Trump, and she's going to show him that, we're just going to pass a clean bill that doesn't give you any money and that just reopens the government, and that's going to be rejected.
When will they have that vote?
When we're headed.
Will she call that vote immediately when she takes the gavel?
Immediately.
So she'll call it as soon as Ryan hands her the gavel. She'll call the question.
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's going to be almost instantaneous.
Okay, so then what? So then you think this? What does this? Could this go on as long as 95? Could it go longer?
I think it could go even longer because you're looking. First of all, it's a partial government shutdown, so it's not the whole government. So the pain is a little bit less than it would otherwise be, and really, from Trump's perspective, I don't think he thinks he has anything to lose. The next election is so far away, and he is quite desperate, obviously, to get his border wall. And, at this point, he's basically said, I'm willing to do what it takes.
You might be offering, David, a thesis into the mind of Donald Trump that is quite correct. Maybe people like me who've been inside the Beltway too long are presuming that Trump has some concern with swing voters. Maybe, in fact, as you suggest, he has really no concern with swing voters at all. And that's what's driving him. Maybe his whole calculation is just a grow the base calculation, and that's the only politics he does.
Yeah, I mean, the swing voters that you're talking about that moved over to him, I think they were ultimately moved in part by a belief that he cares for native-born Americans, people who, have been here for 4 generations and, feel like they are being slighted by people
you're right
who
about
are,
that. You're right about that.
Promoting immigration.
But the point I'm trying to make, I think, is a finer point. That is, if you look at states like Pennsylvania and Michigan, he won Pennsylvania, which is my home state. I've studied the vote in Philadelphia and the outlying counties. He won Philadelphia, not with people who've been converted to the Republican base, although there was some of that, but with voters who are still swing voters who voted for him, you see. And that's and I don't think so. If you can't replicate that, if you can't either bring those people into the base, and you can't bring them all into the base, you never would in places like Philadelphia. But if you can't replicate what you did in 2016, I don't know that he can be reelected. So my point is, if I were advising him, I don't know that you can win on base alone.
I wouldn't say that these people who voted for Trump are Republicans. I totally agree with you there. They're not Republicans, but they are Trump voters and Trump supporters, and that's why they voted for him, because they believed that he was going to change the game. And, it does matter whether they come out and vote again, whether he gets his border wall. I think that is going to be a sign of effectiveness because, was part of his pitch.
Is there also an opportunity here? Like maybe Trump should come out, maybe in for a penny, in for a pound, as you suggest. Maybe Trump should come out in a primetime speech and say something like, the government is shut down. Do you miss it? Do you miss HUD? Do you miss the Department of Commerce? Do you miss the Department of Transportation worried about trucks? Do you miss it? Maybe it's time to come out and do that. Is it time to do that?
I think
that's what I would do.
He is certainly likely to do that at some point. He's definitely going to make a major issue out of the shutdown. But ultimately, I think this is about getting Democrats on the record. His running mate, his opponents saying, we don't want a wall. We want to let the immigrants in. And he thinks that's going to be a winning message for him.
See, this is what I think a Reagan would do.
Get all the Democrats on the record and then say, look, they're all for open borders and crime and all the rest of his messaging.
Here's what a Reagan and maybe even a Gingrich. Gingrich did some of this, just not very effectively in the 90s. Reagan would have done this, but they didn't have shutdowns in the 80s. Maybe it's time to get some poster board and go on television and say, here's what the Department of Commerce is. Do you miss all these things at the Department of Commerce? Did you know you spent billions of dollars for this? This isn't here this month. Do you miss it? I would do those kinds of theatrics. I think we're missing an opportunity for great theatrics here. That's what I'm saying.
Well, he is certainly one for theatrics, so I wouldn't put it past him yet. You know, he's got, I think this shutdown goes on for more than a couple more weeks.
All right, David Bier, enlightening us. We hope to have him back. Immigration policy analyst, Cato Institute Center for Global Liberty and Prosperity. David, what a great way to open the new year. We'll see you back again.
All the stories and controversies that no one talks about, but everyone should know about.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking.
Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Welcome back. Remember, if you want to take it behind the curtain, you call us 703-795-5364, 703-795-5364. Taking your emails now into the 20th century, not the 21st, not yet. Jack Berkman 2016 at Gmail, 2016 at Gmail. Same number, same email. If you know anything about the Seth Rich murder mystery, it's a new year, but we continue at the Profiling Project to investigate the murder of Seth. We will never quit on the Rich family, never quit on the city of Washington. We will get an answer to who killed Seth Rich. Well, I want to talk to you about another emerging murder mystery, and that is, not murder mystery yet, death mystery with my friend Bier Payton. Now, I don't know if you know that name. Bier was a young, beautiful young woman in San Diego. She was a Federalist. She was a conservative. She appeared on Fox News. She wrote a lot of conservative articles. Her greatest credit was that she broke a big story concerning all of the emails between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok at the FBI. Now, the story she broke was that these emails had been wiped clean by people at the Department of Justice. She broke this big story, 26 years old. She broke this huge story. And 8 days after she broke that story, she turns up dead. Now, it's said that she H1N1 flu, meningitis. This is what killed her. Now, there was no autopsy. No one has looked into this. I don't know how many of you have seen 26-year-olds die of the flu, but she was in perfect health. I think she had done television only 2 days before. No known health history, no known health problems. A 26-year-old suddenly dying of the flu. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't see that too often. I think at a minimum, we need a major investigation into the death of Bier Payton. To let this go, to turn our back on this, I think we need to know exactly what happened here. As you know, I have grave and deep concerns about the deep state. I think when you look at elements of the Department of Justice and the FBI and the CIA and all the three-letter agencies, they all have budgets that are far too vast, with far too many people on retainer, doing far too many things that are way beyond the American taxpayer, that are beyond the Congress, that nobody knows what they're doing, that there are all these consultants and all these, frankly, thugs and hoodlums on the payroll, and we don't know what any of them are doing. I am very worried about what may have happened to Bier Payton, and so today I have an announcement. Effective today, the Profiling Project is taking on a new project. Of course, it will continue with Seth Rich in earnest, and we hope to have an answer there soon. But we are now plunging into the death of Bier Payton, and we will find out what happened. Was it, as authorities claim, the flu and meningitis, or was it something far more dark and sinister? We will know soon.
This is a universe where everything is depicted as a Washington Post political cartoon.
Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Welcome back. Remember, if you want to take it behind the curtain, you call us 703-795-5364, 703-795-5364. Taking your emails, Jack Berkman 2016 at Gmail, 2016 at Gmail. Same number, same email if you have any information about the Seth Rich murder mystery. Joining us now is Warren Farrell, author of The Boy Crisis, Why Our Boys Are Struggling and What We Can Do About It, chair of the commission to create a White House Council on Boys and Men. Warren, welcome.
Looking forward forward to our talk.
Well, me too. I think, me too, no pun intended. I think where I know where you're going with this. I haven't read your book, but I've heard great things about it. And I think I know exactly where you're going, and that is with all the focus on women and promoting girls, boys are becoming left behind. And not only are they left behind, they become, at a young age, almost a kind of oppressed species. In particular, white Caucasian boys are oppressed in our society. Isn't that true?
Yes, and what's happening is in all 63 of the largest developed nations, boys are falling behind girls on every single academic subject, and especially in reading and writing, which are the two biggest predictors of success among the academic subjects. And I was beginning to hear about this when I was writing. My background was from a feminist perspective, and so I was like, women down, men up. We have to change that and get them all equal, and women having children without being married, no problem if that's what they want to do. But I found out that I was really very off target in terms of I care about both boys and girls, and I was finding that boys were falling behind in all these ways, except they were way ahead when it came to suicide, when it came to imprisonment, when it came to dropping out of school, when it came to drug overdose, deaths from opioid addiction, addiction to video games, addiction to porn. These were all the ways we don't want our sons to be behind. And at the same time, they were being told, you have all the power, and you're the oppressor, and we live in a patriarchal world in which men have made the rules to benefit men at the expense of women. And I've started some 300 men's groups, and I don't know that a single man in that group who was a father didn't give up doing something he really wanted to do, like be a musician or an artist, or even be a teacher. If he had two or more children and his wife didn't work, he then had to usually give up the jobs of passion and fulfillment to do the things that he felt would allow his children to have a life with more alternatives and more options and a better school system, and his wife to have a good home. And so he gave up earning more. He gave up earning less money and doing things that fulfilled him in order to earn more money. And after having made that sacrifice, he was then blamed for being the oppressor. And it was like this just made no sense to the men in the various men's groups I started, and the men were from relatively poor men to men of some repute, like John Lennon and John Gray. I saw this across the board. But more important, I saw that boys in with every single background were having problems unless they had both father and mother involved in an intact family. And so all of my the family doesn't make much difference. I was just totally wrong.
I agree entirely. Can I offer a different thesis? Let me offer a more direct thesis.
Yeah.
Feminism is destroying the society. How about that? Is that an encapsulation of it?
It is not the only thing that's challenging the society, but the feminist.
It's a big thing. You know what my mother said? You know what my mother said when I was little? She said, girls today don't know what they're supposed to be. And in your day, that will be the number one problem the country faces. And she's right, isn't she?
I think what feminism has done that is wonderful is expand the options for women. What feminism that has done that has been terrible is to undervalue the family and demonize men, and not realize that boys had been trained. It was boys who were trained with heroic intelligence, that is, the intelligence to be willing to give up their lives and die at the age of 18.
Let me get a little controversial, not to interrupt. When you say expand the options for women, haven't we done that much too much? Expand the options for women at what cost? At the cost of children, right? Isn't that what we really mean? Isn't that what we really mean?
Now we're talking exactly the same language here, because when I was on the board of NOW in New York City, the women, the NOW members were saying, we want the option to be able to have children without being married. And today, this is a shocking statistic, but it's precise. 53% of women under 30 who have children without being married. there's three levels of problems with that. Level number one is that some of these children don't even know their fathers, and boys who don't know their fathers, they are the material of the boy crisis. The second group is boys who know their fathers but have very minimal contact with them. The third group is women who are living with men at the time that they have the children, but what nobody knows is that those boys and girls, their children, on average, they only remain involved with their father for between 3.5 to 4 years on average, and the boy crisis resides where fathers do not reside. So they reside in that group, and they reside in one other group, which is children of divorce who have minimal or no father contact after the divorce. Those are the children that fill our prisons. Those are also the children I found out that are almost all of the ISIS recruits are children that have minimal or no dad involvement, and so this is real. And then I did a study of the mass shooters as part of the research for the boy crisis, and found that the mass shooters, about more than 90% of them had either no father involvement, minimal father involvement, or a father that died very early, or the divorce was very early.
Let me ask you this. What are some solutions? What do we do? In other words, okay, so when I started law school, I think law schools were 28% female, and we thought that was high. Now I think there's something like 52% female. A lot of that is absurd because a lot of these women don't work beyond, say, 10 years. So all you have are just completely wasted social resources. I think it's nuts. But how do we turn things around? I mean, do we really want colleges that are half women and half men? I don't think so, because I think you still have, a lot of I think those are absurdly high numbers. And I think what happens is you waste an enormous amount of social resources when you do that. But that's just my view. What do you think?
I think the most important single thing we can do solutions-wise is to make boys who feel that being a father warrior, that we have to develop a concept called father warrior. And in our schools and classrooms, the first thing, if we trace back divorces and how divorces happen, they usually happen from bad communication. So bad communication leads to divorces. The divorces lead to a minimal or no father involvement in most cases, and that leads to the boy crisis. So if we take that all the way back to its origins, if we start getting in kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade, like they do in Denmark, they teach kids to communicate with each other. So the bully suddenly realizes that the person he's been bullying has feelings and has a background and has a way of looking at things, and he starts seeing him as a full human being, and he stops bullying to a large degree. And then when you train boys to be able to express caring and concern and hear their sister and their brother, then everybody is treating each other in a much more sort of full human way. And that seems to create a type of strength in the family that leads to the family being more solid and not just and not just sort of something.
I agree with you, but do we need something more than that? Do we need something further to the right? Don't we need a social refocusing on motherhood? In other words, it would seem to me, if you want, even beyond all of these problems, still more serious is the reality that we don't have enough children in this society. We only grow the population through immigration, a lot of which is simply slave labor. And we don't have, the top 70% of the society doesn't breed anymore. And a society where the top 70% doesn't breed has no future, right?
Absolutely, but let's trace that back now, Jack. As you trace that back, in order to get kids to read, to be effective, you need good boundary enforcement, good discipline. And what fathers usually bring to the home, there's what I call dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting. And I started to all over the world. It's fascinating that dads are far more likely to roughhouse, and moms are far more likely to go, oh my God, when the dad and the kids are roughhousing, mom feels like I have only one more, I have just one more child to monitor. But dads don't explain to moms that they use that roughhousing to develop a bond with the children, and then and that bond allows them to enforce boundaries without there being such resentment between the children and the parents. So the studies of kids that roughhouse with their fathers show that two very counterintuitive things. Their children are not more aggressive, they're more assertive and less aggressive, and B, they're more empathetic, which is about as counterintuitive to roughhousing as you can think. And nobody knows this and nobody explains this to a mom, and moms can't hear what dads don't say. And so the kids that roughhouse, though, and they have the discipline and the postponed, when the father says, if you continue pushing your sister aside or your brother aside in order to win at the wrestling match, let's say, then there'll be no more roughhousing till tomorrow night. And so the kids...
But, and to your point, moms and dads are becoming the same thing. They're becoming the same thing, and that's not effective in a family, is it?
Yes, even more to your point, dads have become oftentimes imitation moms, and that mothering is very important. And so women need to understand, yes, you can have a free choice, but your free choice includes your choice to have children. But the moment you make that free choice is the moment that you make a choice to put your children's interest above your interest. And so that does not mean you have.
In other words, the feminist credo is to very overtly degrade children, isn't it?
Indirectly, without knowing that they're
doing it. Is it indirect or is it direct? I think it's direct.
Well, I mean, they don't see it that way, so I generously call it indirect.
All right.
But the outcome is the outcome is clearly that among the families where there are fathers involved, those children are actually doing better than the generation before. Where fathers are not involved, those children are having, by and large, problems not only in the areas of academia that I've been talking about, but because mostly the postponed gratification leads down the lack of postponed gratification leads down a slippery slope. The kids go into school, they can't finish their homework. They feel badly that they're not getting the pride of the positive response from teachers. The girls are looking at them as being somewhat dumb. The parents aren't as proud of them. They start feeling alienated, ashamed. They withdraw.
And then on top of all that, beyond all that, they face affirmative action, like you have to have so many girls, so many minorities doing this, that, and the other. They face structural barriers on top of all these barriers you're talking about now.
Yeah, exactly. But even if we eliminated those structural barriers, boys are smart enough, as girls are, to feel the shame of doing that, because the expectation historically has been on boys to be able to do well, to get a job, and to be able to help support the family. So when boys drop out of school, they feel that nobody, girls don't go out with the girls don't go out with losers, and they feel like a loser, and so they withdraw into porn, and they withdraw into porn means that your brain.
All right, Warren Farrell. On that note, Warren Farrell, author of The Boy Crisis: Why Our Boys Are Struggling and What We Can Do About It. Warren is chairman of the commission to create a White House Council on Boys and Men. Warren, thanks. If we're real lucky, we'll be able to have you back again. What a great way to start 2019.
All the stories and controversies that no one talks about, but everyone should know about.
Some people without brains do an awful lot of talking.
Behind the Curtain with Jack Berkman.
Welcome back. Remember, if you want to take it behind the curtain, you call us 703-795-5364, 703-795-5364. Operators are standing by 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday to take your calls. Also, your emails now as we come into the 20th century, never the 21st, or not yet the 21st. Jack Berkman 2016, all one word, Jack Berkman 2016 at Gmail. Same number, same email. If you know anything about the Seth Rich murder mystery, and for those of you who follow us on Facebook and Twitter, you know that we have a report on Seth Rich coming out in the near future, which may help to piece together some or all of these moving pieces in the Mueller investigation. How does Seth relate to all these players? We will tell you soon. Joining us now, Ilya Shapiro, Senior Fellow in Constitutional Studies at the Cato Institute and Editor-in-Chief of the Cato Supreme Court Review. Ilya, welcome.
Good to be on.
Well, you're our smart guest of the week here with editor-in-chief of the Supreme Court Review. You qualify as our intellectual guest. As such, let's start out. I want to talk about impeachment, talk about Democratic subpoenas in the House and impeachment. Let's kind of start with the macro and go to the micro. What do you think chances of impeachment are? Like, I remember when I was on the Hill in the 90s, and then I was with Fox News being part of the impeachment drama in 98 and 99, impeachment is not that simple. Like Tom DeLay and Denny Hastert predicted they could ram it through the House and nothing flat, but it wasn't that easy. And they eventually did get it through the House, but it was difficult to do. And, of course, Clinton then was acquitted in the Senate. You think it'll be hard for Pelosi just as it was for them then?
Well, Pelosi has said that impeachment is not going to be a goal of hers. Investigations, oversight, certainly making life hard for the president and his lawyers and agency lawyers around the administration. But actual impeachment, it's a political remedy. And realistically, President Trump is a little bit underwater. He's never been above 50% in approval rating. I think he's currently somewhere around 44%. But really, unless that drops to something like 20%, it's a fool's errand. There's really not much point to it, particularly given that you need 2/3 in the Senate to remove, which will never happen. So, there's
well, of
no
course,
standard definition.
There's no logical point
of high crime and misdemeanor. But it's really a political question.
There's no logical point, but of course you have Mr. Ryan and Ms. Rice and Mr. Moulton in Massachusetts and all these other liberal Dems who want to hit Pelosi from the left and call her a centrist, right? I can't imagine how you could call Nancy Pelosi a centrist, but there are enough wackos in the Democratic caucus now that maybe you can, and maybe she has to do impeachment to survive.
Well, we'll see in the coming days. It could be very soon where she announces her deal for being elected as Speaker, what kind of compromises. Term limits is what I'm hearing, but regardless, I don't think you're going to have a majority of Democrats, let alone a majority of the House, who's going to be supporting impeachment, unless some more shoes drop in the Mueller investigation or something that really creates political damage to the president.
Who would win on impeachment? It would seem to me, again, we'll try to be empathetic here, put ourselves in Democratic shoes. I mean, if you're Pelosi, I probably wouldn't want to do it if I were Pelosi unless I had to do it. On the other hand, it certainly would get the base out for both the presidential and congressional elections in 2020, right?
Well, it would, but it has a big danger of misfiring, and just as happened with the Clinton impeachment.
With the Clinton.
He survived that and was stronger afterwards, and so similarly here with impeachment, or even with the subpoena canon, the Democrats have promised to keep the presidential lawyers occupied.
Again, it's trying to sit. We don't have a Democrat here, so I'm going to sit in the Democratic shoes and see it from their point of view of a wacko liberal. If you sit in their shoes, I wonder if Clinton is the metaphor. One, Clinton was generally a lot more popular than Trump, and different strengths in different ways, but as a general proposition, more popular. Now, impeachment hurt the Republicans with swing voters. Would it hurt Democrats with swing voters today? Are we sure about that? Would it have the same effect, or would we be fighting the last war?
Well, it depends what your model is for turnout in the next election. If your swing voters are the Obama-Trump voters, the ones that gave the president his narrow victory in states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, I think those folks would definitely be turned off by attacks, I think, that they might think are unwarranted on the president. On the other hand, if there's kind of a turnout election of the base of younger folks that don't generally vote, things like that, then the calculus might be different. It goes part and parcel with the larger debate going on among the Democrats about whether they should pursue a Rust Belt strategy or a Sun Belt strategy through Arizona, Georgia, Florida for 2020.
Well, I think the answer is they have to pursue a Rust Belt strategy because they're already winning. They're already sweeping the Sun Belt. I mean, they've already got the only state they have left to take is Arizona. They probably couldn't win that in the presidential anyway. They've got Nevada. They've got New Mexico. They've got Colorado. So I don't know. The question becomes, you've got to attack. The attack has to be in the Rust Belt. So then that would argue against impeachment for them, right?
I think so, and it also means, Nancy Pelosi, although a San Francisco liberal to be sure, has not survived this long in politics without significant savvy, and I think she will want to have certain kinds of investigations that inflict damage without rising to the level of a complete backfire that turns people off the Democrats. It's going to be a fine balancing act, given, as you say, demands for pieces of flesh from the base, from the left-wing activists.
Now, the thing about Pelosi, though, the deal she's about to make, she said, well, she'll stay in there another 4 years. I mean, God, she's 80 years old. Another 4 years is a big joke anyway, and she probably would just ignore that deal. So if that's the only concession, basically they're conceding with no concessions, right? I mean, isn't that what's happening?
In general, the whole leadership, Trump, Pelosi, the other Democratic leadership, we're governed by people who are in their mid to late 70s. Apparently, Joe Biden is one of the front runners for the Democrats. If we're becoming a younger country and all that, this is something that we could see a sudden shift.
Well, we could have maybe by 20. I don't wish this on anybody because we wish everyone good health. But maybe the speaker, the majority leader, and the presidential candidates will be in wheelchairs, and we can have like elderly water aerobics or something. Maybe that's the image the Democrats can push forth.
Let's not forget Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg as well.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Well, we have to include her, and that we wish her good health, but we have to put her in the campaign ads in her wheelchair as well. And maybe this is it's the party of the old. Maybe that's what they are. All right, 1 minute left here, Ilya. All kidding aside now, let's look at our friend Elijah Cummings now. What do you think he's going to do, very, very briefly? What do you think he'll do in terms of subpoenas?
Well, they're going to target Trump's tax returns, I think, his business dealings with foreign governments, with Vladimir Putin, try to find out information about that. Of course, lots of that is tied into the Mueller report. So there's going to be a lot of kind of ticky-tack stuff, looking at ethical violations over security clearances and things like that. But really, until the Mueller report comes down, we don't know which direction, what they're going to emphasize in trying to inflict political damage on the president. All
right, Ilya Shapiro, Senior Fellow, Constitutional Studies, Cato Institute, Editor-in-Chief of the Cato Supreme Court Review, and without question, brightest guest of the week. Ilya, if we're real lucky, we'll see you again. Thank you.